George Conway is a conservative attorney and former Republican political operative. Renato Mariotti is a former federal prosecutor, legal affairs columnist for Politico magazine. Both join me now. Renato, let me just start on you on sort of your top line kind of takeaway from the stack of these developments. The informing Trump that he's a target, the meeting that happened, this active grand jury, which seems to be doing still the kind of investigatory work you would expect, not, the day before someone's indicted. What do you make of all of it together?
So a bottom line is, if a prosecutor tells you that you are the target of their investigation, it means they expect to indict you. When my clients now, when I was on the other side of the aisle, when I was a federal prosecutor, that's when I told somebody that they were a target, that's what I meant. When I sent a target letter, it meant that an indictment was going to follow. And if one of my clients gets a target letter now, that's what I tell them. You need to prepare for an indictment, expect that that's going to happen. And we actively start preparing for that to happen. So that's big news. And then regarding the fact that witnesses are coming in, what that tells me is it's not happening like tomorrow. I know there's a lot of smoke around that, and maybe it'll happen, but generally speaking, if witnesses are going before the grand jury this week, and today, as one witness you mentioned, is going in, a Trump spokesman, that suggests to me that an indictment's not happening tomorrow. They're going to be, absorbing that testimony, including that in some of their paperwork, sending an indictment over to Merrick Garland for his review. I would expect an indictment not to be happening in, let's say, a matter of a few days, but maybe next week, a week after, or even further from that, as they make decisions regarding, the scope of indictments and which venues to bring them.
George, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I basically agree with that, and I agree with your excellent summary of what's going on. I mean, I think the word that you could use here that was probably inadvisably used in the Georgia investigation is that an indictment is imminent. I mean, I think it's they're basically telling him they're likely to indict him, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be tomorrow. Doesn't necessarily mean that next week. I mean, but it does mean that if you are a believer in the rule of law and a hankering for the rule of law, the Santa's going to come early this year, and it's not going to be in Christmas. It's going to be sooner rather than later. But we don't know. It's just rampant speculation that it could be tomorrow or the day after, or at 11 o'clock tomorrow, or next Thursday. But it's very just clear, given all the indications which you laid out nicely, Chris, that we're at the end. We're reaching the end stages of the investigation. I mean, the fact that so many leaks are coming out now is a function of the fact that so many people know what's going on. Right. Everything except the timing, because the defense lawyers are all sharing information about witnesses who have gone into the grand jury or talked to the FBI, and it's just a flood of information that's coming out. And now, I guess in Trump world, the word has gotten out that the target letter has been received, and that's it's seeping out into the press.
I want to just.
These are the end stages of an investigation, but
I just want to stress what you said there, because I think that's actually important, because one of the weird things, right, is like the tempo of information. So why are we learning so much? And to your point there, I think you're right about that. It's sort of from my perch as a journalist, right?
Yeah, basically the more people that know something, it's just, Yeah, a lot of people now know a lot about what's going on, but not everything. And there's a lot that we don't know.
Renato, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know if Santa's bringing coal this year, if someone's been a very bad boy or not. But I do think what is happening now is there are certain facts that are known, right? So we know about a meeting that occurred. We saw his attorneys outside. There's major reporting about that usually is at the end of an investigation. We know there's a target letter. That is, I think, very substantial. That's, very clear sign that Trump is going to be indicted in this investigation. I think a lot of the rest of what we're hearing are echoes of assumptions that people are making and their own understanding of events. In other words, reporters are hearing from Trump's lawyers all sorts of theories and ideas about what's happening. They're not hearing from Jack Smith, the guy that, we rarely catch on video. An NBC reporter might catch him when he's on his way back from Subway. What we're really getting is these faint echoes. And so, but I do think, as George said, it's really coming to a head right now. And that's the important point.
George, let me ask you about this venue issue. And I know no one has any, again, special insight into this to stress what Renato just said, right? But we do know that there is this grand jury in Florida. It appears to be fairly new. And I think the informed speculation about that is that you want to avoid venue problems, that if you indict him in Washington on events that happen specifically in Florida, you could be setting yourself up for venue challenges. Those venue challenges could be difficult. They could hand some sort of tool to the defense. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, the Sixth Amendment provides that the criminal defendant in a criminal case is entitled to a jury from the state and the district in which the alleged crime was committed. And that's the bottom principle. Now, how that's applied depends on the particular facts of the case, of particular cases. We don't know all the facts here, but we know a lot of the facts, a lot of the things that were bad occurred in Florida, although some of the bad things were directed at an investigation that was being conducted from Washington. And there is not, just because the Constitution has clear words on it doesn't mean that the case law is necessarily that clear as it applies to specific statutes and specific factual scenarios. Yeah. And as I understand it, the law isn't necessarily uniform from district to district. So they're going to try to minimize the risk of having an indictment bounced by bringing, taking their best shot where they think it most likely is to stick. And given the amount of activity that went on in Florida, bad activity, it's not surprising that they have a grand jury going there.
Yeah, it's well said. George Conway, Renato Mariotti, thank you both, gentlemen.